What's up, everybody? My name is Dell. This is Dell on Movies. Thanks for hanging out with me. And if you've been here before, thanks for hanging out with me again. It is that time where I talk about all the movies that I watched in the previous month. In this case, I'm talking about January 2024. Can you believe it's already over? I've got a lot of movies to talk about. I went over my usual amount of movies that I watch. I actually wound up with more than a movie a day for January. We'll see if I can keep it up for the rest of the year. I'm not really stressed about it, but we'll see how it goes. But let's just get into it, so let's not waste so much time. First movie I watched all year was The Equalizer 3. It was a trip to the theaters on New Year's Day. My wife and I went. We were big fans of the Equalizer franchise. More specifically, at least for me, I'm a huge fan of the first one. Didn't care for the second one as much, so I was cautiously optimistic for this one. Went into it and had a blast. The violence, way more graphic. It's more brutal than any of the other two movies, and the storyline worked pretty well. I like the idea of him, trying to get away from it all, trying to just be a normal person, and trouble finding him, sorta. He finds it a little bit, but Denzel did do a good job again. But I would be remiss if I was saying that it's not time for him to hang up the equalizer. So if this is the last one, I am perfectly fine because yes, there were some scenes where he's looking a little slow these days, and you can't blame the man. I mean, he's not a spring chicken anymore. But that said, still really enjoyed the Equalizer. 3.5 stars from me. The next movie I watched was Rebel Moon, A Child of Fire, or Part 1, A Child of Fire, as you can see here. And this was a complete Star Wars ripoff from start to finish. It just hit every beat that A New Hope and at some points Empire hit. And then you throw in a couple of other things that it ripped off, Dune for one. And it just didn't work. And then we got to the end. And you know what? I'm not even going to get into it. It just did not work. So that one was a two-star movie for me for Rebel Moon. The next movie, Maxine's Baby, the Tyler Perry story. This is a documentary about Tyler Perry. And in this case, he didn't make the documentary, but he did have something to do with it, which has something to do with my score. Which 3 stars, I actually liked it. It wasn't bad, but it's a fluff piece, kind of like the Sly documentary. To a lesser extent, the Arnold documentary. That was really good, though. So it was enjoyable. You got to learn a few things about him. But the flip side of it, it they kind of skirted around some things. Mainly his relationship with other black creatives, and especially in his own camp, even as far as like writers and things, where he kind of fired everybody from all of his shows. If you don't know anything about Tyler Perry, he's got all these TV shows on TV right now. I don't know. I've lost count. 6, 7, 8 shows, and some sitcoms, some dramas, and then he's got the movies that he's putting out. And I think he still has a couple plays that he's done, and he writes them all. And he touts his own work ethic, and it is a phenomenal work ethic. But the quality of the work, it doesn't grow because he's the only one that writes everything, and he is the only one who really lays eyes on it before they film it. So at least as far as my knowledge goes, if I'm wrong, let me know. But it wasn't always that way. He once had writers, and he fired them all when they were complaining about work conditions or money or whatever it was they were complaining about. And now he just does everything, and it was kind of ironic. So when we had the writers strike last year, he came out speaking like he was on the side of the writers. It was a little weird, and they kind of skirted around that kind of issue. And then they even skirted around. They didn't really skirt. They brought up his beef with Spike Lee a lot, but then they skirted around what could be a resolution because we see Tyler Perry Studios at the end of the documentary. Not a spoiler. He built this huge movie studio down in Atlanta, and Spike Lee was there, and they were looking awfully chummy, so they didn't really get into that. That would have been interesting, but overall, still not a bad one. I'd say a 3 star documentary for Maxine's Baby. Next is God's Time, and this movie, as you can see, I did like this movie. Good, it was a 3.5 star movie, and this was an interesting film. It's a kind of a dark comedy and a little bit of a drama. We got these recovering drug addicts, and they're all in a support group together, and one of them is infatuated with another. So this guy right here, he is infatuated with this young lady right here. And she, of course, is very troubled. Aside from being an addict, she has some real issues with her boyfriend, and she's always threatening to kill him, but then she backs off of it. And one day they think she's really serious about killing him, and they decide, this guy and his best friend, they decide to intervene, and then shenanigans from there. I thought it was a really interesting watch. I really enjoyed this. 3.5 stars for God's Time. Next up is Police Story 2. And this was the start of, for me, what not what I'm calling, I didn't come up with this. Somebody on Instagram, I came up with this, and I'm just kind of ripping it off and borrowing from them. If I could find the page that did it, if I could find the IG person, I'll put their link on the screen somewhere. But they're calling it Jackie January. So I said, hey, that's a cool idea. I've got a bunch of Jackie Chan movies that I've never seen in my collection. So I just started picking out some to watch. And Police Story 2, believe it or not, was one of those movies. I'd seen Police Story, but I'd never seen Police Story 2. So I went ahead and watched that one, and get used to it. You're going to see a lot of Jackie Chan here. And this one was good. Solid movie. 3 stars. This time, it's really a true sequel, picking up not long after the first movie ends, and Jackie Chan, gets into some crazy shenanigans again. And yeah, if you like Police Story, check out Police Story 2 if you haven't already. Most true Jackie Chan fans have probably already seen it and probably shaking their head like, I'm some kind of noob to Jackie Chan. Like, how could you have not seen Police Story 2? But I've now seen it. Good stuff. Next movie on the docket was another Jackie Chan movie. This one was Jackie Chan Kung Fu Master, and this was, this was a lot, guys. This was bad. So this is not my review here. I don't know why it clicked on to that, but it kind of sums up what, if you want to pause and read it, go for it, because it kind of sums up. Oh no, this is my review. I take that back. Whoa, I forgot I wrote this. This is how bad. Let's my starting sentence, guys. I never thought I would hate a Jackie Chan movies this much. And in fairness, this is my second sentence. In fairness, it barely qualifies as one. Guys, this was kind of a, looks like a straight to video, straight on demand, straight to streaming, whatever it was. It was 2009, so probably straight to video. And they put Jackie Chan on the box and on the cover, and he's in the movie for like 3-4 minutes at the beginning and maybe 5 minutes at the end, and he's playing Jackie Chan. And what it is we got this kid who's a big Jackie Chan fan, and he wants to find Jackie Chan and learn martial arts from him. And that's really the story of the movie for the whole time. And that could be okay, except they did it in the worst way possible. The dialogue sucked. The look of the movie was terrible. The fights were bad, except we had Jackie Chan in a halfway decent fight again at the beginning where he's filming a movie within the movie, and then at the end he's doing the same thing. He's got another little bitty fight scene. Everything else was garbage. It was trash. Half a star for Jackie Chan Kung Fu Master. So don't see that. If you haven't, unless you just have to see every Jackie Chan movie, just don't even bother. The Creator, something we went away from Jackie for a moment. We watched The Creator, and this movie, guys, fantastic, at least in my eyes. I know some people have some issues with it, and I did not. It did bring to mind a few other movies, I will admit that, and this is definitely another one of those, AI has gone wrong type of movies, but I really enjoyed it for what it was. The visuals were amazing. I thought they were the best of the year, to be quite honest with you, best of 2023. Working with the budget that they had and the result that they gave us, it was just phenomenal. And the story, I was fully engaged all throughout the whole movie. I was fully engaged with the story. So yeah, 4 stars for me for The Creator. No problems with that movie. Let's move on. Next movie is A Good Person, and this one, you know what? Let's do it. I'm not even gonna mess around with this. Just go ahead and bump this one up. It is a 4-star movie. Let's actually save it. All right. So yeah, it's a 4-star movie for me. Florence Pugh in this movie, she is, once I learn how to work Letterboxd, I'll be even better at this. But Florence Pugh, she's great in this movie. Morgan Freeman, he's good in this movie. He's playing a slightly different version of the normal Morgan Freeman character, but he still does it phenomenally. You know who he is. You know what's going to happen. This is another movie about an addict, really. In this case, she is addicted to painkillers after she had a car accident that uh, killed her friend, a married couple that were her friends or really close friends with her and her fiance. And then her life fell apart from there. And I'll not say anything more about it, but yeah, I would just highly recommend checking out A Good Person. However, it is can be tough to watch at times. So if you don't want to go through ups and downs and a lot of downs at that, then skip out on it at least for that day and come back when you brace yourself a little more. But yeah, Good Person, 4 stars for me. Next is Gran Turismo, and I'm giving out big stars here this month, guys. Gran Turismo. I was not expecting anything from this movie. I used to play the game. This is one of the last games that I was really serious about playing back in the day, and this was actually Gran Turismo 3 that I used to play. So way back, and it was a phenomenal game. It was addictive, and I used to play this game. I would play this, and I would play Madden. And this game, if anybody's familiar, some of the races like they're taken from real life races, like the 24-hour race in this movie. They had that on the game, and it was really 24 hours. So what I would do, thankfully, you had an option for an autopilot, basically, and I'd start the race, set it on all autopilot, and I'd do that at night, go to bed, get up, go to work, do all those things, come home the next night, and turn on the game, and the race would be finishing up. And of course I had the best car, so I would be winning it. That wasn't an issue. But back to this actual movie. The movie, we based on a true story, we follow a guy who was a gamer, who was playing the game, really good at it, and got recruited to see if he could be a real driver along with a bunch of other people. And the way they handled this was excellent. It was thrilling. It kept you in the movie. You were engaged. You were locked in. And then you got a lot of nice little Easter eggs with video game graphics on the track as they were racing sometime. So I thought that was cool. Performances were really good. David Harbour's David Harbour, so he did a really good job with this. And Orlando Bloom was actually surprisingly okay. I mean, he wasn't great, but he was okay, and I don't really like Orlando Bloom, so that's saying a lot for me. But yeah, check out Gran Turismo. Even if you're not a racing fan, you're not a video game fan, it's just one of those movies that just draws you in and keeps you there. So another 4-star effort from this list of movies. That changes right here. 9 Deaths of the Ninja. And this one, why did I watch this movie? I'm trying to remember why I watched it, but it was one night I just kind of put it on. And as you see here, a trio of specialized soldiers is called in to stop a group of drug traffickers who have hijacked a busload of tourists in the Philippines and threaten to kill them all if one of their companions is not released from jail, and the government does not stop its anti-drug policies. And that is the most intriguing thing about it, is reading that little blurb. It was handled poorly, not as bad as Kung Fu Master, but it was not a good time. So skip out on 9 Deaths of the Ninja, except, I will say this, except the opening credits. They're the most crazy out there opening credits ever, because it's so craptacularly awesome. It's got disco and ninjas and scantily clad women. It's a wild time. If the whole movie were that, then this would be great. But the rest of the movie took itself a little bit too serious to get to that so bad it's awesome place. So it is what it is. 1.5 stars for me on 9 Deaths of the Ninja, which, misleading title. There are barely ninjas in the very beginning of this movie. And that's about it. Next movie is Bleeding Steel, which is another Jackie Chan movie. And this one, I knew nothing about going in, and it's more straightforward action flick than martial arts flick. He does have some fighting scenes in it, but this is much more Americanized, American style action movie. It's not the worst thing, and you can see here he's a special forces agent who fights to protect a young woman from a sinister criminal gang. So I think the name that I actually know it under, or knew it under, I think was Who Am I? The girl is supposed to have amnesia. She doesn't have amnesia. Something happened to her where she doesn't seem to remember anything, but it all comes back around. It was an okay watch. 2.5 stars, right down the middle for Bleeding Steel or Who Am I? Um, I'm not sure which title is which, meaning which is the American title, which is the Chinese title. I don't know. The next one, let's get back to a good Jackie Chan movie finally. Project A, which I had never seen, and I've had that one in my collection for quite a while. Same thing with a couple of these other ones also. Again, I've had them in my collection. Project A, this one, the story is actually a little on the weak side, but but the action is really good. The action is so good, and you just have a good time with Project A. It's convoluted, is what the deal is with the story. As it says, late 19th century Hong Kong, the British rule, but the pirates rule the waters. So we got a lot going on. And the Coast Guard officer, they're determined that their beloved Coast Guard will not be made a fool of. This is Chinese Coast Guard. So there's a lot of back and forth, and Project A is really like, what they're gonna do to set things right, and they go through the movie trying to get Project A going, and phenomenal stunts in this movie. This is what sells it. 4 stars if you're a Jackie Chan fan. If you haven't already seen Project A, go ahead and check that one out. And then just on a whim, I decided, you know what? I've never seen the Thomas Crown Affair. Let's go ahead and check it out. So I did, and it was a good time. I have not seen the original, and I probably need to do that. This one though, it was a good time. We got Rene Russo as a well, no, she's not a cop or Interpol agent, but she's insurance. She's right. She works in insurance, and she's trying to catch the thief of a famous painting, and she thinks that it is Thomas Crown, played by one Pierce Brosnan. And then, of course, you have Interpol, all is and they're on Rene Russo's side, but they don't really trust her because her method of trying to find out is getting really close with Thomas Crown in some ways that they're not necessarily comfortable with. And yeah, they have a lot of back and forth between her and the police, the Interpol there, and then of course there's a relationship with her and Thomas Crown. So really good time with it. 3.5 stars from me. Glad to have finally put my eyes on that one. Next up is another Jackie Chan flick, Wheels on Meals, and we are back to 4 stars for Jackie Chan once again. This time, he and not this guy, that's Sammo Hung also in the movie. Jackie and this guy, they have a food truck together, and some things pop off around them, and they keep finding themselves in these situations where they have to fight, and it's just fun. It's funny. And the fight scene's spectacular. The stunts crazy. Jackie Chan jumping out of that window. How does this man? How is he able to walk today? This it just amazes me, some of the things that he's done, because in that stunt, I mean, he hits the ground pretty tough, and yeah, it's a crazy time. Eventually, they get caught up with a young lady who's a pickpocket, and she's wrapped up in some dangerous things, so they got to help her. And 4 stars. Yeah, and I could go on about Wheels on Meals, but I will stop there. And then I had a movie that is quite different from Meals on Wheels. This is Saltburn. Saltburn, not a Jackie Chan movie, obviously, but this one, watching this one, I kind of had my mouth agape a lot. Like what he's doing what, huh? And what it is we got my man here. This, of course, Barry Keoghan. He's a college kid, and he's kind of taken by another kid who's a more popular guy in school, and I think he's got a crush on him, or at least he seems to. He has a real crush on him, but this kid is not the guy here. It's another person. Is kind of a flighty type, I guess. He apparently he takes somebody home with him every year during the summer, and introduces them to the family, and then they all act wild for the whole summer. So that's kind of what this movie is, except my man Barry here is a little bit different, a little weirder than some of the other people, and we get to watch all the shenanigans that takes place between him and his crush's circle of friends. and we get into some pretty weird, pretty dark places. And it's 3.5 stars right now. I vacillate between going up to 4 stars or coming down to 3 stars on this movie because it is just kind of an oddball, and I'm not always sure how I feel about it. But today, 3.5 is where I am standing. Next movie is Nyad, and Nyad is a, it's a solid 3.5, and it's not a great movie. It is a movie I like though. This movie's based on a true story. We got Annette Bening and Jodie Foster. Annette Bening plays Diana Nyad, who tried to swim from Cuba to Florida back in her 20s and was not able to make it. In her 60s, she decides, you know what, I want to try again. And this is the story of that journey of her trying again. And we get a lot of trying again in this film. So if you want just a feel-good movie, an inspirational movie, Nyad is something to throw on. It's getting a lot of Oscar love these days. I don't necessarily agree with that. Well, I would say they were both great. Annette Bening was great. Jodie Foster was better, I think. So if there's one Oscar nod I would give it, it would be for her. But regardless of that, though, it is a feel-good movie. Something that is if you want a nice light movie to watch, this is one you can check out. 3.5 for me on Nyad. Next movie is The Covenant, and I know everybody's really high on The Covenant. Everybody's really high on this one. This was the Guy Ritchie movie, war movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, and this is set during the war in the Middle East, the war on terrorism, and they've recruited a bunch of translators, one played by my guy here, and Jake Gyllenhaal. They get into a situation where it's just these two guys kind of on the run, and they get chased down by the bad guys, by the terrorists, and Jake Gyllenhaal becomes incapacitated, and my man here has to rescue him. So he does, or he tries to, and well, the rest of the story plays out. And again, this is one where if you're looking for a feel-good movie and you're not going to analyze it too much, then it's a good movie to watch. If you're going to analyze it and compare it to other movies and tropes in other movies, then this is going to come down for you. And that's kind of where I am. So I recognize it's still a well-made movie, not one I'm probably going to go back to, but 3 stars is what I have for The Covenant. And I realize that this is the type of movie that a lot of people are gonna have 4 and 5 stars on. I get it. And, if that's you, that's cool. It just didn't work out that way for me, but it is a solid watch. So I'm not gonna argue the point. It's got some great action scenes along the way. Next movie was Totally Killer, so I'm a little bit late on this one, and I did have a good time with this one. 3.5 stars for me on Totally Killer. We basically get a Back to the Future kind of movie, and they even reference Back to the Future a few times. We go back to 1987. After we get some murders in the beginning, and we realize that these are the same murders from an unsolved crime, same type of murders, seem to be from the same killer from 35 years earlier, but those crimes were never solved. And bada boom, bada bing, through some plot machinations, our main character finds herself back in 1987, and go. It was a good time though. 3.5 stars on Totally Killer. And next movie up is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. This is another one I know a lot of people are 4 and 5 stars on. I'm 3.5, which means I did really like the movie. It is. I don't have an issue with the movie per se. It just didn't quite reach the heights that it did as it did for other people. But it is a really good movie. So and I could be persuaded probably on the second watch to go to 4 stars, to be honest. In this one, we got a young lady here who's growing up. It's just a coming of age movie for her and her friends, and I think in middle school, and they're worried about boys and puberty and how their relationship with mom, and it's their moms and dads. It's all good stuff. So the better you relate to the movie, of course, the higher you're gonna score it. And it's not that I couldn't completely relate to it because I do have daughters, so I could recognize a lot of the things that my daughters went through years ago, and that gave me a kick. But a really good movie. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I know it's named after the book. I get it, but man, we gotta shorten that title. We could have shortened that title anyway. Next movie, another trip to the theater. I got to go see American Fiction, and American Fiction, 4 stars for me on that one. Really had a good time with this one. Jeffrey Wright, phenomenal performance. He's always great. If you're not familiar with his body of work, just go start watching a bunch of his movies. He's great in everything he's been in. He's also a very versatile actor. He can play lots of different roles, lots of different types of roles, and he's been good every time. In this movie, his character is a writer, and he's a kind of artsy fartsy, hoity-toity writer, for lack of a better term. His work doesn't really connect with the average person. So while academia recognizes that he's a great writer, it's not selling. His books don't sell. His last book was like a decade earlier, and he just happens to or hear about another author. If you've been to Walmart, Target, especially now, February is Black History Month, you'll see a lot of these romance novels, cheap romance novels or hood novels on the shelves at those stores, and it's not the highest literary quality, but they sell like hotcakes. And he finds an author who's writing those types of books, and decides on a whim, you know what, I can do that nonsense, and he just writes it and sends it into his publisher, who loves it because he knows it's going to sell, and then the world starts to love it, and of course he's now having an existential crisis because that is not who he is, that is not what he wants to promote, but it's going gangbusters from a financial standpoint and commercial standpoint. So he's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Alongside that, we get kind of a kitchen sink drama with all this stuff going on with his family, after his mom passes, and his strange relationships with his brother, and it's a lot going on. And of course he takes up a liking to the lady who lives across the street. I say all that to take a moment to reach over here, actually, guys, and I'm gonna pick up a movie that it reminds me of. Here it is, right here. So sorry for looking away from the camera for so long, but anyway, I should have had this out, but I didn't. But it reminds me a lot, and I'm gonna bring this down for a second and just go, yeah, big screen. And it reminds me a lot of this movie, Bamboozled. And I got to take a moment to hawk anything Spike Lee, right? So Bamboozled, we in that movie, I didn't watch it during January, but we got our main character played by Damon Wayans. He's a TV exec. Things are not going well, and his boss is like, "Hey, you need to come up with a hit or else." And he decides to come up with the most stereotypical show he could possibly do. I mean, his characters are actually in blackface, and it becomes a huge hit. And then the movie goes from there. Same kind of thing in American Fiction. I'm gonna go back to the screen. Yeah, he is he purposely writes this movie with all sorts of stereotypes and cliches in it, and it goes well. So yeah, if you like American Fiction, I would recommend Bamboozled highly. It is a much more in-your-face version of that same tale, but it is a good one nonetheless. American Fiction, 4 stars, no complaints from me. It's just an observation. Next movie, Stamped from the Beginning, and this one is a documentary. This one is based on a this one okay this one basically talks about the history of racism in America, and that it's not, when we're talking about the history of racism, we're talking about the history of power. This is on Netflix, by the way, so you can check this out. We're talking about the history of power in this country, and the two go hand in hand. And they go through a lot of different things, and I highly recommend this movie. 4 stars for me. One of my favorite documentaries, if not my favorite documentary that I saw last year. It's one of those that I may go up from 4 stars. And I will say that for me, 4 stars, if I when I first see a movie, is a lot. It's saying a huge amount because I'm a little reticent to just automatically put 5 stars on something. I'll go 4 stars, and then if I watch it again or think more about it, and then I can go up. Okay, yeah, you know what? That is a 5 star movie. Next one, not a 5 star movie. This is A Haunting in Venice, and the third installation in I don't know what do we call this series. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we call this series, but it started with well, you know what? I'm not even gonna tell you what it started with. I'll put it on the screen because my brain is gonna blank as it does sometimes when I'm in front of the camera. But this one again, third installment. It was a solid movie. It was cool. Some people, just based on the name, might think it's a horror movie. It is not. It is another murder mystery. It has a lot more in common with Scooby Doo than it does with any horror movies that you might know of, because you're really just Kenneth Branagh and the gang trying to solve a crime. And it's interesting. It's got its high points. Tina Fey was cool in the movie. Uh, Kenneth Branagh is Kenneth Branagh. He just plays that role, Hercules, so well. Hercules Poirot. So I guess we'll call this the Poirot trilogy. I don't. If anybody has a better name for it, let me know. But yeah, I had a cool time with it. It wasn't great. Wasn't bad. Next movie is Lift. This was the. I'm actually gonna come down just a bit on this to 2.5 stars. And that said, though, it's not terrible. I know everybody seems to hate this movie. I don't hate it. Uh, Kevin Hart was dialed down a little bit. The rest of the cast was okay. Kind of convoluted and dated because we're talking about NFTs, but it was okay. Kevin Hart, he's the leader of a gang that steals expensive things, and so happens his ex-girlfriend is Interpol, I think Interpol, and she's hot on his trail. But when she tracks him down, she basically hires him to steal something expensive so they can entrap somebody else. And, we've seen that kind of thing before. And they decide the best way to do this is not just to steal the thing, but to steal an entire plane that the thing is on. And I won't go into details on that. So it's cool if you turn your brain off and watch it. But if as soon as you see NFTs or as soon as you see Kevin Hart's face, you're like, oh my God, I can't stand this. Don't bother. Don't watch it. It is a Netflix movie though, so you can check it out if you want. If you have Netflix, of course. I just automatically assume everybody has Netflix. I don't know why I do that. Next movie, we're back to Jackie January. This is Snake in the Eagle's Shadow. And this is a solid movie where Jackie Chan plays a guy who is not really into martial arts all that much. Uh, and he's basically kind of slow guy in this movie. Slow, don't kill me. I could use the R word or anything else like that. But anyway, basically he gets beaten up a lot, and he eventually becomes friends with an older guy who teaches him how to fight. It's that kind of story, but it's cool because we get lots of good fighting, lots of stunts. 3.5 stars. Snake in the Eagle's Shadow. So Jackie January continues on with that one. Definitely give that one a look. And this movie right here is Rustin. And Rustin is a movie where I have 3.5 stars on it. I may bump it to 4 at some point, or I may leave it here. It's one of those things where the lead performance here by Coleman Domingo is so good that it makes you want to lean towards putting it at a 4 or even higher. But the movie itself is not as good. And it is the story of, based on a true story of this man here, Bayard Rustin. Uh, he was kind of shunned by a lot of other civil rights leaders because he was a homosexual, and he was integral in getting the March on Washington, the famous march where Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech. Uh, he was integral in putting that together, and this is that story. And we get to see how who he is. We get to learn a lot about him. But yeah, he Coleman Domingo just knocks it out of the park. He had one of the best performances of the year. The Oscar nod completely deserved. So definitely check out Rustin if you have not. The next movie on the list here, the next movie I watched was Maestro. Interesting how Maestro draws an interesting parallel to Rustin. Maestro is another movie based on a true story, another biopic. This time we got Leonard Bernstein as the topic, played by Bradley Cooper. Really long marriage to his wife, played by Carey Mulligan, who's just phenomenal in this movie. But so he kept up the marriage with her, but while all the while he was seeing a lot of men on the side, a string of men basically, and then of course he's creating all the music that we know and love. So the juxtaposition between this and Rustin is that Bernstein, at least in the movie, almost never had to deal with consequences that Rustin did, even though time-wise they line up pretty well, right? We're talking similar eras or the same era in some cases. We're going through that same era, and part of it is class, as in economic class. Bernstein, he's in that upper echelon, and part of it is culture, where during the civil rights movement you just could not be a gay black man and be looked upon kindly by most people. Um, Whereas in the art world where Bernstein was, obviously that was a lot more common. And the problem with as a movie though is it made Bernstein not as interesting. He spent a lot of time just being rich and saying snooty things, and that kind of thing bores me, to be honest with you. So just watching rich people just be rich, that kind of bored me. There was all the emotional weight of the movie was dropped on Carey Mulligan, to be quite honest with you. And if the entire movie, had been seen through her eyes, I think I would have liked it 10 times better. As it is, well made movie, looks fantastic, but it's just boring for me for most of the time. So 2.5 stars is where I am with Maestro. And again, I know this was getting a lot of best movie of the year buzz and Oscar buzz and top 10, all that kind of thing. Just didn't do it for me. Though Bradley Cooper was fine. I don't think he was all that great. I think he was, again, he was just kind of, he dove into this Leonard Bernstein impression and just kind of stayed there the whole movie. And I never really got a feel for Bernstein as a person. So that's why I don't think the performance was all that great. Whereas with Rustin, I did get to feel that him as a person. All right, next movie is Black Belt Jones. Now, Black Belt Jones is, I just happened to be scrolling on Netflix, probably after Rustin and Maestro, because I watched both of those on Netflix. And there it was, sitting there, Black Belt Jones, because you watched whatever other action flick I watched at some point. And I've seen this movie before. I've seen this a couple times before back in the day. This is Jim Kelly. If you don't know Jim Kelly, he is the black guy in Enter the Dragon. That's the easiest way I can explain it to you. Of course, he has lots of other movies, but in this movie, this was one of the ones that was like right after Enter the Dragon, 1974, obviously. And it's silly, it's goofy, it's fun at the same time, so I love it. So if you're looking for good writing, don't even bother. If you're looking for great acting, don't bother. Just it's not here. It's not terrible acting, but it's not really good acting either. If you want some cool action scenes, yeah, you can get some cool action scenes. Not the greatest fight choreography, but you can get some good ones, especially the big finale when he has a fight and suds are everywhere, soap suds. In other words, this is the most biased 4 stars that I've probably ever given, certainly since I've been doing this on YouTube. But yeah, so enter at your own risk. Let me put it that way for Black Belt Jones. Next movie, Judgment Night. I watched this for Corey's channel, Wilkie's Movies and More. I was stumbling all over that. For anyway, I was a guest on his channel, and he said, "Hey, let's discuss a movie that we enjoy. It could be something we've never seen before, but we could watch something we enjoy." And we fell upon Judgment Night between the two of us, and I hadn't seen it since theaters back in the 90s, and so it was a blast to revisit this one. I had a good time. Check out Wilkie Movies and More for both of our thoughts on it, and we get into an in-depth conversation on that. We talk about music. We talk about a lot. 3.5 stars is where I land on it, but I'll leave the link to his channel down in the description to his video in the description. So go check that out. And the next movie after that, we got Guns, Girls, and Gambling. This is a movie I found in Dollar Tree one day, and Blu-ray, matter of fact. 2.5 stars is where I am here because I just grabbed it because of the title, and it kind of lived up to it. Kind of lived up to it. We got Elvin impersonators in there. We got some cowboys. We got some Native Americans. We got some female assassins. It's kind of a nutty movie. Another one that might take itself a tad too seriously, and does some of the things that are kind of getting tired right now. You know, a character comes on the screen and then we get the and their name and all their stats and everything like that. That's kind of getting kind of tired right now. But it's in there, and I get it. It's a 2012 movie when that was a little more common, but even then it was, okay, can we do something else, guys? 2.5 for Guns, Girls, and Gambling. Give it a look if you're just looking for something just kind of fun. Next movie was Dumb Money, and with this one, I didn't like it as much as everybody else because this just felt like The Big Short, another movie from a few years back that got a lot of Oscar buzz, and it shares some similarities. If you're not familiar, this was about a couple of years ago when this GameStop stock just started going through the roof, and it was all because of this one guy, one YouTuber, or one guy on Reddit rather, excuse me. And he happened to be a stockbroker, and he recognized some things and told some people about it, and then everybody from Reddit started buying GameStop stock and it went through the roof, and it threw Wall Street into a frenzy. And it's a cool story. And my guy here, Paul Dano, is just always amazing, so he's great. But yeah, it just felt like The Big Short, with a smaller cast. It was good, but not great. I'll watch it. I might watch it one more time because I think my wife wants to see it. She didn't watch it with me. But after that, I probably never will return to this movie again. But I won't say it's a bad movie. So I did enjoy it. 3 stars. Next, we're finally getting to the end. We got Batman Mask of the Phantasm. If you're watching this the week that it comes out, I was asked by my guy, Caveman Movies and More. His name is actually Guy. To be on his channel and talk about Batman Mask of the Phantasm, but I could not be on the stream. So he said, hey, you know what? Make a video just a couple of minutes long and send it over. We'll include it. I said, cool, I'll do that. But I wanted to rewatch it because I hadn't watched it in at least 10, 15 years, actually. So I did that, and it still holds up. 4.5 stars for me for Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And to be honest with you, it actually has gone up because I think I had it as a 4-star movie before. But you can watch his stream or the replay of his stream, and I'll leave a link to that if I can. I'm not sure if YouTube lets me do that in the future. I think I can. So I'll leave a link to that also. But just to summarize it here, it's a really excellent movie, and one where for the first time we get to see Bruce Wayne struggle with his mental health and whether or not he should be Batman, and is it worth it, and what the cost of it is to him personally. So I really did enjoy my revisit to Mask of the Phantasm. Then watch the movie called The Kitchen, and this is not The Kitchen with Melissa McCarthy, not that one. This is a more recent movie called The Kitchen, and this was an interesting watch. It's a post-apocalyptic movie, and there's this tenement building in London, where it's called The Kitchen, and it's basically one giant slum, and police every now and again just go in there and raid the place seemingly for no reason, and start arresting people, knocking people around. The big deal here is we got this young guy. He loses his mother at the beginning of the movie, and he's taken in by this guy who he meets at the place where his mother is buried. So what it is, sorry about that. So, at the place where his mother is buried. So what it is that in this timeline, in this future version of the future, when you pass away, you are basically planted with a tree. I forget exactly how it works, but my issues with the movie is that they didn't go enough into that. Why do we have to have this post-apocalyptic setting? This could have been set today and it would have been perfect, because what they're really trying to do is they're trying to make some social commentary about the intrusiveness of the government and how unfair it is, and maybe even some racism, and we got some other things that are thrown in there, some social commentary, serious social commentary that they're trying to do, but it gets kind of lost in the fact that uh, nothing from the other side is ever really told to us. Not much, but they're just kind of a faceless bad guy. And then the apocalyptic futuristic setting is not put to good use. So I thought it would have been better served if those things had been addressed. So as it is though, a very interesting watch, and I still will give it 3 stars. And upon rewatch, who knows, maybe it goes up. Next movie is, we're back to Jackie Chan. We got New Fist of Fury. And I'll say this movie is the hardest to judge of all the Jackie Chan movies that I watched this month. Um, if you're not familiar, Fist of Fury is, here it is a Bruce Lee movie. Yeah, it was, if you're an old head like me, you used to know it as the Chinese Connection. Now it's called Fist of Fury. Um, and the plot is very similar to that, where Japanese are basically running roughshod over the Chinese in their own country, and the Japanese are also, this includes, them imposing their will on all the martial arts schools in the particular area that the film takes place. And that's what's happening here, is that we also got a little bit of a side story, not a side story, we got another story with a young lady who had to leave one place and come to where this story takes place, because she doesn't have any more family. She's there with her uncle, and she kind of falls into this whole thing. Jackie Chan is he's kind of a second tier character in the movie, but he winds up getting the spotlight later in the movie. Uh, there are, what gets it up to 3, because the story is it's okay. I've seen it before. Not that I've seen it before, but the movie came out in 1976. Fist of Fury was what, 70, 71, 72, something like that. Um, so it wasn't that old. They just basically ripped it off. And then this is at a time when they didn't know what they had. Golden Harvest, or whoever he made this movie, I think it was Golden Harvest. They didn't know what they had with Jackie Chan. They're trying to find the next Bruce Lee, and they think he might be it. And so it's a lot more serious role, of course. And not only do they rip this story off, they rip off the bit where Bruce Lee is doing the magic hands kind of thing. They rip off that from Fist of Fury, and it looks horrible in this movie. But that said, there are some spectacular fight scenes in this movie. There are I would say 3. That's what gets this up to 3 stars. Rest of the story, and they could have kept this really convoluted, not handled very well. And I bought the Arrow set of this recently, and I've showed that off, or will show it off in another video, depending on when you watch it. And in that, there's 2 versions of the movie. There's the original, and then there's the original theatrical, and then there's a re-release of the film that came out 4 years later, 1980. That one is 40 minutes shorter, and I think this is because Jackie Chan had become more of a star, and it seems to focus more on Jackie Chan. I didn't really watch it. I started to watch that version, cut it off, and said, nope, let me watch the original theatrical, and had a good time with it. So yeah, 3 stars from me on New Fist of Fury. And that brings me down to the last movie I finally watched in January, which was another Jackie Chan movie. This one is Hand of Death. And in this one, the story is a little more traditional to the movies that I used to watch. I grew up watching on Channel 5 in New York back in the day, Saturday afternoons, where we got a bunch of monks. They've been killed. Bunch of monks have been killed, and now some have gone out into the world and trying to not get some resentment, but trying to stop somebody from destroying Shaolin altogether. Jackie Chan again is not the main character here, at least not early on. But what's remarkable about this film, directed by John Woo. He wasn't going by John Woo at the time. He was going by his Chinese name. And the same goes for Jackie Chan. He was going by his Chinese name, and Sammo Hung, all going by their Chinese names in this movie. And I didn't really mention, but Sammo Hung has showed up in a couple of these Jackie Chan flicks. So I got to add some more to my Sammo Hung filmography too that I've seen now. And this was just a fun time. We just got lots of fight scenes in this one. And Jackie Chan actually has a big moment towards the end of the movie. He gets a big moment there. And I really, really did enjoy Hand of Death. There you have it. Finally, guys, all the movies that I watched during the month of January. Let me know how many of those you've seen, what you think of the ones you've seen, which ones did I intrigue you to watch, which ones did I make you say, oh yeah, I'm going to keep staying away from that one. But look forward to your comments and we can talk about it down there. That's all I have for you on this one. I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Bye.